Welcome to the Howie Silbiger Show on the True Talk Radio Network. Get in on the conversation. Call 1-877-669-1292.
And I'm Howie Silbiger. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being here. I do appreciate you joining me. Number to call if you want to get in on the conversation. Number to call, 1-877-669-1292. That's 1-877-669-1292. It is a free call. Well, it's free for you. It costs me money, but it's free for you. So spend my money and give me a call, 1-877-669-1292. We have a lot to talk about, and I want to get right to it because there's a couple of things that happened this week that really bother me, and I thought that we should talk about it. And I think it's important that we talk about the stuff that bothers us, even if some people have been trying to encourage me not to talk about this stuff on the show. That's right, you heard me right. Some people have told me, Howie, don't talk about this. But I want to talk about it because I think it's important. So let's have a conversation. Let's figure out some stuff together. So right after Yom Kippur, a story came out that was disturbing. Now the story was that just before Nila, just before the end of Yom Kippur, the police went into a synagogue and had a synagogue and raided the synagogue and shut the synagogue's services down. Now, the story went that the synagogue had done nothing wrong, was following all the COVID guidelines, and the police came in and shut them down. This was the story that was being sold after Yom Kippur. And I listened to the story. I saw the video that went viral, and I watched the video that went viral. And I listened to the story, and then I put out a call on various networks, on various chat networks, and asked for people who were eyewitnesses to contact me, and maybe I would get an eyewitness or two on the show, and we could talk about this. Because if this was police targeting the Jewish community, then I would say, all right, let's expose them, because that's what we do on the show. If this was police picking on the Jewish community, or somehow bashing the Jewish community, I would say, come on to the show, let's talk about it, let's expose the police. Well, the only person that contacted me publicly was the guy who posted the video, Beryl Solomon, who went on with Ezra Levant just a couple of days ago, and told the same story. And then there were a couple of people who contacted me privately, who said they were there, and contacted me privately. And I spoke to the people who contacted me privately. And the story that they told was remarkably different than the story that was in that viral video. Which is why I chose not to have anybody on the show to talk about it. Because the story is extremely unclear. So the viral video, Beryl Solomon's viral video, said that there was they were having Yom Kippur services at the Chabad of Côte Saint Luc. And that the police came in, and without provocation, without any reason to do it, they emptied the building, they evacuated the building, and they dispersed the people who were attending services there just before Nila, just before the end of the Yom Kippur services. And he said in his video very clearly, and he repeated it again on Rebel News, that he felt that they were following the protocols, that the Chabad was following the protocols laid out by the government, which essentially at the time was 25 participants in a minyan, in a quorum, in a prayer gathering. And each prayer gathering, each area that people were praying in, that had 25 people, had to have an entrance and an exit that was separate from all the other ones. So you had to have a clear entrance and a clear exit, and it couldn't be the same exit and entrance from the other people. And these were the rules at the time, and these were the rules that Beryl said that they were following. But that's not quite what some of the other people who called and wrote to me reported. It wasn't quite the same story. So the story I got from the other people, and I'm going to present both sides of the story because I wasn't there. And I decided not to put either side on because I didn't want to start that big fight between one side and the other side. But I wasn't there. But the side that I got, the other side that I got, was that the Chabad decided to play with the rules a little bit, as some religious groups tend to do. And what they did was they had 25 in each prayer quorum, but they separated the prayer quorums by curtains. And there wasn't a clear exit and entrance, so it wasn't exactly following the rules the government laid out for COVID. And there were more than the prescribed amount of people there, and because of that, the police had to move in and break it up. So these are the two sides of the story. I still have an open call for anybody who wants to come onto the air and clear this all up, including the Chabad people. If they want to come onto the air and clear this all up, I'd be more than happy to welcome them onto the show. I didn't call the Chabad people. I'll just be honest. I didn't call the Chabad people. They haven't made any public comments on this, and I didn't want to push them to make a public comment because normally when this kind of thing arises and this kind of thing happens, and the people who are organizing the event don't comment on it, that usually tells the whole story. So I didn't want to push them to come on, but they are more than welcome. And anybody else who was there or who wants to express their opinion on this are more than welcome to express their opinion. I just told you what I had heard from both sides, and now I'm willing to open up the lines and listen to what anybody else has to say. If you want to call in and you want to talk about that, the number to call, 1-877-669-1292. That's 1-877-669-1292. It just bothers me sometimes that people, they run out and they claim anti-Jewism. They yell that something anti-Jewish happened when it wasn't necessarily anti-Jewish. It bothers me when people do that, and so I usually over the years I've called out different stories that I felt were a little over the top when people were yelling anti-Jewish. It's not it's like the boy who cries wolf. That's really the way I see it. It's like the boy who cries wolf. Well, if we yell anti-Jewish, anti-Semitism, Jew hatred all the time, and if we point to everything and saying that everything is anti-Jewish, then at the end of the day, nothing is anti-Jewish. It loses its potency, and exploiting and causing grief and causing strife between the community and the law enforcement agencies or the government because you are trying to get around the rules doesn't sit well with me at all. Now, if Chabad was actually following the protocol, which is possible, they might have been. I heard from both sides, and one side said they were, and one side said they weren't. So it's possible that they were following them to the best of their abilities, and the police overreacted. But it doesn't sound likely. And the reason I say that is because there is precedence. There were other things happening in the city, other tents that had multiple minions, that had multiple prayer sessions, other event areas where synagogues had people praying that didn't get raided. So if the police were out there to get the Jews, I figure they would have gotten the Jews everywhere. They would have gone to Apple Park and gotten the Jews where there were 3 tents in Apple Park. They would have gone to Applewood Park and gotten the Jews. They would have gone everywhere there were Jews assembled and gotten the Jews. But somehow, just somehow, they only went to one place in that area. Apparently there were 7 synagogues, mostly in the Hasidic areas, that were raided. There was a story I heard about Satmar, and the Satmar synagogue being raided because they had 350 people there. So I have no empathy for people who flaunt the rules and then the police come and enforce the rules. It's very hard for me to empathize with people who think that they're above the law, especially when the law is there to protect people, when the law is there to protect life. More important than anything else, more important than praying, more important than keeping kosher, more important than anything else in Judaism, is the preservation of life. That is the paramount responsibility of every Jew in the world. Preserve life. You could sacrifice everything else to preserve life. So So, if we are talking about if we are talking about people who are intentionally flaunting the rules, intentionally skirting around the rules, and not preserving life, then all the mitzvahs you did, and praying and everything else, and all the hopping of the chest you did, repenting to God. If you're causing people to be in danger, then you are not really repenting, are you? If you're causing the spread or aiding in the spread of a deadly disease, and we are in the middle of a pandemic for a deadly disease, if you are aiding and abetting the spreading of a deadly disease while you're trying to beg for forgiveness from God and beg for your life during the 10 days of awe, and you're there and you're flaunting the public health guidelines and potentially spreading the disease to tons of people, then do your prayers really count? No, I'm not a rabbi and I'm not God, so I can't answer that question. I'm just going to ask the question, and it's something we should all think about when we go out and we attend these services, and we know that these services are flaunting the rules, and we know that these services and we know that the people organizing some of these services. No, don't get me wrong, and please don't get me wrong, because people love misquoting me. So please don't get me wrong. At the end of the day, most of the synagogues in the city, in all areas of the city, followed public health guidelines. Most of the synagogues, and there are hundreds of synagogues in the city, little ones and big ones and tiny ones and huge ones, most of the synagogues in the city followed public health guidelines. I'd say over 90% did. So don't get me wrong. The condemnation is for the little ones and the few that did not follow public health safety guidelines. And those are the ones that give the Jewish community a bad name. Because they're always the ones who are vocal. They're always the ones who come out running at the end of the holiday. The police raided us. It's anti-Jewish. They hate the Jewish community. They're always the ones who do that. And always when you dig deeper and you look at the actual situation, you look and see what actually happened, you realize that the police don't hate the Jewish community. The police are trying to protect us from ourselves. So whenever I hear somebody yell, the police hate the Jewish community, look what they did, I always like to look a little deeper into the story. And looking deeper into the story means that sometimes the results of the investigation are quite different from the initial story that went out. So I'm hoping, and now everything's pretty much shut down. The government has pretty much shut everything down. But I'm hoping that the guidelines are followed by all synagogues in the future. I'm hoping that people don't flaunt the rules, because the more you flaunt the rules, the more you change the rules and to fit your own personal needs, the longer we're going to be suffering through this pandemic. And I don't know about you, but I'm really sick and tired of this. I really want life to get back to some semblance of normalcy. And the only way that could happen is if people started following the rules and stopped playing games. And then when you do play games and you get caught, stop yelling anti-Jewism. Because that takes away, it really takes away from actual cases of anti-Jewism. It takes away from actual cases where people are being victimized because they are Jewish. It takes away the credibility of the term anti-Semitism, anti-Jewism. It takes away. So don't do that. Now, this is not the first show I've done where I've talked about people who overuse the word anti-Semitism, who overuse the word anti-Jewism, who overplay their hand when it comes to Jew hatred. It's not the first show I've done on this. I've been doing shows on this for 20 odd years, more than 20 years. And and in these 20 odd years that I've been doing shows on this topic, I've always said the exact same thing and exactly what I said tonight. Stop doing it. if it's a clear case of anti-Jewism, and sometimes it is, then feel free to yell anti-Jewism. Feel free to yell Jew haters. Look at these Jew haters. But if you're flaunting the laws, if you're breaking the laws, if you're not following the guidelines of the public health authority, don't come crying later and say that the police broke you up and it was anti-Jewish. That's just disgusting. I'm Howie Silbiger. This is the Howie Silbiger Show right here on the True Talk Radio Network. Feel free to call in. The numbers to call, 1-877-669-1292. That's 1-877-669-1292. The lines are open. You can feel free to call in anytime, and we could talk about anything that you want to talk about. If it relates to what we're talking about, if you have something else you want to bring up, feel free to call in. Now, you could also message me, put into the message board. If you're watching on Facebook, on YouTube, on Periscope, you could just type into your message box there, and the message will pop up on my screen. So if you don't want to call in, you could always type in. So I got a message now, and I want to share it with you. Ephraim writes, "Okay, Howie, hypothetically speaking, is following the lockdown the way to end the pandemic? From what I've read, lockdowns can delay, but ending most comes from a form of herd immunity." All right, Ephraim, I don't actually believe in lockdowns. Now, I've been quite vocal about this for a long time. I don't believe that lockdowns are effective. I believe they're harmful. They're harmful to people who live alone. They're harmful to children. They're harmful to a lot of people. I'm not a big fan of lockdowns. It has been proven, if you take a look at the statistics from around the world, it has been proven that lockdowns are not effective. They may be effective in the short term, but in the long term, we just go back to where we are. Take a look. We had a lockdown in April, around Pesach time, and look where we are today. Lockdowns didn't do anything. They flattened the curve for the moment, and then suddenly, it spiked right back up. So herd immunity hasn't been a proven thing either. The thing that is going to save us from this pandemic, the thing that's going to end this pandemic, it's two things. Number one, the virus itself is naturally mutating, and we're seeing the mutations. If you take a look at the reports, you're seeing the virus is mutating to a softer version of the virus. Viruses tend to want to survive, and if they're killing their hosts, they don't survive. So what's happening is the virus is reducing itself in order not to kill the host, which is always a good thing. So that's why in April we saw tons and tons of people dying from the virus, and this time around, I mean, there's people dying, but not as many people dying from the virus, because the virus is becoming less potent. Secondly, therapeutics is the way to go. So when they develop the monoclonal antibodies and the polyclonal antibodies that are needed in order to fight and combat this pandemic, those will be the saving grace of the pandemic. Herd immunity, that comes with time. So that means that all of us really have to get the virus in order to become immune from the virus. And there's not even a guarantee that if you get the virus, you're immune from it. So I have a feeling that we're going to end up in the same situation we are with the flu, where there's no vaccine for the flu. They call it vaccine, but it's not really a vaccine. Where they inject you with some antibodies before the flu season, and then you're kind of covered for the few months of the flu season. I have a feeling that that's what's going to happen with COVID. I could be wrong. I'm not a doctor, but I could be wrong. But I don't think lockdowns is the way to go. I really think the disruption to society, disruption to the disruption to the economy is not prudent. And I also have in mind. I also know, and this is something that people point out to me all the time, is I know that the survival rate of this virus is extremely high. It's in the high 90s. So the people who are dying and the people who are getting really sick from this virus are generally people who are inflicted with other diseases, unfortunately. So we have to protect the vulnerable, but locking down the entire population to protect the minority of the population doesn't make sense to me. But that's where we're at. Nobody asked my opinion. Well, you did, but the government did not ask my opinion. So I could express it here, but my opinion is just that. 1-877-669-1292 is the number to call. 1-877-669-1292. That is the number to call. And on the same note, wearing masks, both, everybody wearing a mask in public when you're around other people, and washing your hands is the best way to stave off this disease, according to every medical expert out there. This is the same way to this is the way to stave off the disease. All right, we got some more messages in. Let's go to them. You think it's been set out on purpose and Finder, etc., in a lab in Wuhan? There is evidence that the virus was developed in a lab in Wuhan. There are scientists who claim to have been in the lab when they developed the virus. They have been silenced pretty much by the by the American government and by the social media companies. I don't know if you remember a while back, Tucker Carlson on Fox News interviewed a scientist just a couple of weeks ago. He interviewed a scientist, and then Facebook marked it as false news. So the scientist that he interviewed, I watched that interview very carefully, and the scientist interviewed on Tucker Carlson claimed that there was that the virus leaked from a lab in Wuhan. Now, whether it's true or not, who knows? But what is true and what has been proven is that the virus did not come from, as they originally claimed, the wet markets in Wuhan. So, where the virus came from, and if there is a vaccine for the virus or a cure for the virus, it's still up in the air, unfortunately. All right, Ephraim. So again, hypothetically speaking, if a group of young people feel based on scientific evidence that lockdown is wrong, why, if they go to synagogue, which the government changes their rules on a whim, do you say prayers are not accepted? We are bound by government regulations, Ephraim. So if you feel that the government is wrong, then you have the option to vote out the government. But we are bound by the laws of the government. The government makes the laws, and we have to follow them. And the government, in this case here, the government claims to make the laws and then put the recommendations in place for the virus. They put them in place because they say that they get the ideas and the ideas for for what they're going to do from medical authorities. Now we have to trust somebody, and we trust our doctors to keep us healthy. So we have to trust that the medical authorities know what they're talking about, and there's no hidden agendas here. There may be, there may not be. I don't know. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, so I couldn't tell you. But all I know is that when we have laws that are put into place, and we are obligated to follow those laws, then we should really follow those laws. I say that the prayers aren't accepted because if we knowingly are having prayer sessions, and these prayer sessions, we are knowingly spreading this disease or potentially spreading the disease and putting people's lives in danger, then what's the purpose of praying? I mean, the whole idea is pekuach nefesh, is saving a life. If we are putting people's lives in danger, and we know this virus has killed people, and we are cramming in, without masks, hundreds of people into a synagogue, then do the prayers really mean anything? If you're putting other people's lives in danger, that was the question I asked. I mean, that's my opinion. Do the prayers really mean anything? I could say, look, I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry, God. I'm sorry for all the sins I have, but I'm committing a sin right now as I'm saying I'm sorry for all the sins. What's the point? Then you're being counterproductive. I hear you, but you just said lockdowns are wrong, and now you're saying we have to trust the government. Well, I have an opinion on lockdowns. I'm not the government. I have an opinion. And I don't believe that in a public health situation, in a situation where the public health is at risk, and the doctors are suggesting that this is the way it should be, that we should double guess the doctors. I really don't believe that that's what we should be doing. I may disagree with lockdowns. I may personally think that lockdowns are pointless. But if that's what the doctors are suggesting, then we have to follow their recommendations. It's the responsible thing to do as a community. And violating their recommendations may potentially, I'm not a doctor, they're the doctors, I'm not the doctor. Violating their recommendations might potentially put a lot more people in danger. And if that's the case, then following, and even if it puts one person in danger, then following the protocols is really the only thing that we could do. It's the only thing we should do. If according to Torah law we are supposed to follow the law of the land, what's your perspective then on those religious Jews, specifically in New York and Israel, who disobey, etc.? Well, that's what I've been talking about since the beginning of the show. Look, if you go into the synagogue and you say, hey, God, I'm sorry for my sins, while you're committing a sin, the sin of putting other people into danger, putting other lives into danger, then what's the point in praying at all? I think, I believe, I understand where the religious community is coming from, that God predetermines everything, and while you shouldn't throw yourself in front of a truck, God is going to determine whether or not you get the Wuhan coronavirus. That's going to come from God. It's not coming from a man. And so God chooses that this guy gets it and that guy doesn't get it. I get the concept. I understand the concept. And I understand, I understand predetermined fate. I understand the philosophy very well. At the same time, I understand that we are not supposed to put ourselves intentionally in danger. So if we know that something we are doing is intentionally putting ourselves or somebody else in danger, then we have to back off and not do that. So people who are specifically disobeying public health guidelines, people are doing it on purpose because I believe God is going to protect me, are intentionally putting other people in danger. Well, then you're putting other people in danger. Then you're not really following Torah law, are you? You're not really following the rules of Pekuach Nefesh, of saving lives. We know people are dying. Hundreds of thousands of people have died from this disease. It's not a joke. So if it's not a joke, and we know hundreds of thousands of people have died from the disease, why would we take the chance with our own lives, with other people's lives, with our children's lives? Doesn't make sense. It's not logical. But that's what people are doing, and it's wrong. So I've been saying that from the get-go, and I believe, and I strongly believe, and you could quote me on this because I will repeat it over and over again. I strongly believe that the authorities should fine each and every one of these synagogues that have decided to break public health guidelines. There should be massive fines. The only thing that people tend to understand is their pocketbook, is a hit to the pocketbook. That seems to be the only thing that people understand. So if that's the only thing that people understand, then that's how we should hit them. You break the rules, major fine. That's the way I see it. 1-877-669-1292, 1-877-669-1292. I'm Howie Silbiger. This is the Howie Silbiger Show right here on the True Talk Radio Network. TrueTalkRadio.com is the website. Go visit TrueTalkRadio.com for this show and a whole lot more. TrueTalkRadio.com. And, of course, download the True Talk Radio Network app by going to your favorite app store and just searching for the True Talk Radio Network app. And you can listen to True Talk Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's right. We're on, I'm not on. The station is running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. At night, overnight, you'll and all weekend. You'll be pleased to know we play radio shows from the 1940s, 50s, 60s, old time radio. It's a lot of fun. So if you're into that kind of thing, listen to TrueTalkRadio.com. Okay, so if I'm messaged again, I still don't understand why you would want all the synagogues fined when you yourself said you don't personally believe in lockdown. Okay, so let me explain it again, because if you don't understand, I'll explain it again. My personal belief is my personal belief. At the same time, I understand that we are in the middle of a pandemic, and I am not a doctor, so I could believe in something. It doesn't mean I'm right. Just means that's what I believe. I don't believe that lockdowns are effective. Now, the doctors might believe that lockdowns are effective. And if the lockdowns save one life because somebody didn't get infected, because they were locked, somebody did infect somebody else because they were locked into their homes. If they save one life, Is it not worth the lockdown? Now, if you break the lockdown, the public health authorities, when I said the synagogue should be fined, I said they should be fined for breaking public health authority guidelines. So the public health authority said you can only have 25 people at a prayer service. If you decide to cram 350 people into your synagogue, you should be fined. Because it is known that people singing and people speaking, people coughing and people spitting on each other is the way that this disease is spread. Now I know that there were synagogues that had 300 and 400 people in the synagogue on Yom Kippur, and most of the people in the synagogue were not wearing masks. So you cram 300-400 people in the synagogue, not wearing masks. A little bit of singing going on, some sneezing, some coughing. I mean, that could be a super spreader for the disease. Now, although the disease is extremely survivable, what if there's one person in that crowd who has some kind of immunocompromised disease or some kind of immunocompromised condition? What if one person in those 350 people gets really sick and dies because they attended that service? That's why I say that synagogues that violate this, any institution that violates the public health safety guidelines, should be fined, should be shut down and fined. And that's the reason. I may disagree with the lockdowns. I may think that the chances of getting the disease are minute, but they're not anymore. The disease is spreading quick through the community. But I do believe that public institutions are doing the right thing. Now, if lockdowns save one life, then it's effective. So I don't know why you would think lockdowns are not effective. I can't really grasp playing both sides of the issue. I'm not really playing both sides of the issue. I'm expressing my opinion, which is that I feel that lockdowns are more harmful than helpful. But at the same time, I'm saying that I understand the public health authorities' perspective on it. And my opinion really doesn't count in this matter. The public health authority's opinion counts. And because the public health authority is the government and they make the rules, then we are obligated to follow the rules. I could express my dissension. I could express my dismay. I could express my my opinion that I disagree with the rules. But at the same time, I believe we should be following them. Because once again, there's that potential, that little potential of saving a life. Now, will that life be in jeopardy if we don't have the lockdowns? Maybe, maybe not. Is life a calculated risk? Definitely. When I walk into the street, I don't know if a car is going to come careening out of nowhere and hit me and kill me. Do I still walk into the street? Of course I do. So, I believe my personal opinion is that lockdowns are not effective. The government's opinion is that lockdowns are effective. So whose opinion counts more? Who holds more weight? The government definitely holds more weight. And if I want to rationalize the fact that the government's opinion holds more weight, and if the government scientists are telling me that it's, the lockdowns are there because there's the potential to save at least one life, then that's good enough rationale for me. So even though I disagree with it and I think that lockdowns aren't effective, I also understand that perhaps saving one life is very effective. So I'm of two heads. I mean, it happens that you have a differing opinion from the government, but you also understand the government's opinion. And I know it may sound like I'm being wishy-washy. I'm not being wishy-washy at all. I'm being practical. Yeah, I'm being a realist, and the realist view on this is that we have to follow the government guidelines, even if we disagree with them. 1-877-669-1292 is the number to call. 1-877-669-1292. Get in on the conversation right here on the Howie Silbiger Show, right here on the True Talk Radio Network. I'd love to talk to you. Feel free to call in 1-877-669-1292. Now take a look. Let's just use a practical example, an example that's happening right now. The President of the United States is the most tested man on the planet when it comes to COVID-19. Twice a day he's tested. Everyone around him is tested twice a day. He lives in a bubble where there's no way anything penetrates that bubble. And yet he somehow managed to get the disease. So, lockdown, like I said, we'll go back to my opinion that lockdowns don't really work. Here is a man who is locked down. Here is a man who is completely locked down, completely living in a complete bubble, who managed to get the disease. So will the disease permeate lockdowns? Of course it will. There are plenty of cases, and I could point to at least 4 or 5 cases of people who were locked down who managed to contract the disease. So like I said, I'm two heads of this. I have two different viewpoints that I kind of understand, and I kind of agree with. I kind of lean towards. I definitely lean more towards the lockdowns are useless point of view, but at the same time, I understand the other point of view. And I think that if the government passes the laws, we have to follow the laws the government pass. I may want to turn right on a red light. I may think that it's pointless not to be able to turn right on a red light, but at the same time, I don't turn red at a red light because that's the law. 1-877-669-1292 is the number to call, 1-877-669-1292. Or you could type into the message box on Facebook, on Twitter, on Periscope, on YouTube. And you could leave me a message there, and I'll be more than happy to read out your message right here on the Howie Silbiger Show, right here on the True Talk Radio Network. So when the President of the United States declared the other night that he had COVID-19, and that him and his wife had COVID-19, instead of an outpouring of sympathy to the President, many people, and many people who are friends with me on Facebook, posted that they hoped the President died. I was almost left speechless when I saw that. They hoped the President died. What kind of people? What kind of sick people would wish death upon somebody else? I might disagree with a lot of people, and I do. I disagree with a lot of people. But I never wish death upon them because I have a political disagreement with them. I never wish death upon them because I don't agree with their political point of view. That would be totally disjointed and insane. Yet so many people, and I'm talking, north of 50, in my little circle on Facebook. So many people wished the President dead. We're cheering that President Trump got sick. I'll be honest. The only time I ever celebrated the death of somebody I disagreed with was when Yasser Arafat died. I celebrated the death of Yasser Arafat not because I believed that it is important to celebrate the death of our enemies. We learn in the Torah that we shouldn't be celebrating the death of our enemies. Right after the Pharaoh and his armies were drowned in the Red Sea, we learned that we shouldn't be celebrating their death. But Yasser Arafat was actively promoting, orchestrating, and paying for the murder of Jews. He was a Jew murderer. He was a rabid serial killer. And being a rabid serial killer, he was evil. And you have to celebrate the death of evil. Now I know the Torah tells us we shouldn't be celebrating the death of our opponents, and every man is created under the image of God. I understand the Torah's point of view on this, but he was pure evil, and pure evil. I will always celebrate the removal of pure evil. Now nobody can make that argument that Donald Trump is pure evil. That would be a ridiculous argument to make about the President of the United States. And those people that were celebrating his death, and those people that that were cheering and hoping that he died, celebrating his illness and hoping that he died. What a sick bunch of people. Really, really, really revolting. Another message from Facebook. Could you imagine what would happen if Biden got it and croaked? Look, I don't wish it upon anybody. COVID-19 is not a disease I wish upon anybody at all. And I hope that nobody gets it. And I really hope that that the president recovers, his wife recovers, and his cabinet recovers, because they all got infected. So I'm hoping that everybody who got it recovers, and there's no deaths. And I hope that everybody who's infected by this horrible disease is safe and recovers quickly. I don't want to imagine Biden getting it, because I don't wish that upon him. Look, we're in the middle of a presidential campaign. There's an election in less than a month, and I don't wish ill will or ill harm on any of the candidates. I hope they remain healthy and stay healthy for the rest of their natural lives. Do I care who wins? Of course I care who wins. I have my side, and I care about them. But that doesn't mean that I want the other side to die. Look, the only people I really don't care if they die, if they live. Well, I care if they live, but I don't. That would be not upset that they died. The only people are these terrorists who are trying to kill Jews. If they all died tomorrow, if they all contracted COVID and died tomorrow, you wouldn't see a tear shed by me at all. But the candidate for a presidential election that I disagree with politically, you'd have to be psychotic to wish death upon him. I'm not psychotic. Sorry. 1-877-669-1292 is the number to call in. 1-877-669-1292. Get in on the conversation here on the Howie Silbiger Show. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to the Howie Silbiger Show. I'm Howie Silbiger. Number to call, 1-877-669-1292. That's 1-877-669-1292. All right, another message from Facebook. With respect to the election, do you think America is headed for a civil war? I believe, and I've said this before, that the BLM protests, the Marxist protests that we're seeing now in the streets, are a political ploy to try to get Donald Trump out of office. It is obvious to me that these riots, this violence, the burning down of American cities, are all a ploy to try to get people away from voting to Trump. Now, why do I say this, and how's this obvious to me? Because I believe the people when they speak. So the leaders of BLM have been very clear. The leaders of Black Lives Matter have been very clear. First thing they said was, we are trained Marxists. That's the first thing they said, so I believe them. They're trained Marxists, and this is their goal, is to impose Marxism on the American people. Second thing they said was that our goal, and they actually said this, there's video of them saying this, our goal is to remove Donald Trump from office even before the election. You can't be clearer than that. So if that is their goal, their stated goal, if they don't achieve their goal before the election, then I'm afraid that this is what's going to happen after the election, that these riots and this craziness is going to continue. If Donald Trump loses the election, you'll see a very quick resolution to the Black Lives Matter's riots. You'll see them disappear really quickly. Because the people who are funding them in order to get rid of Donald Trump. So once Donald Trump is gone, the people funding these riots will stop funding them, and the riots will stop occurring. At the same time, if you take a look at if Donald Trump does win, and you take a look at what happens after Donald Trump wins, you're going to see that these riots are going to continue because the people funding them will continue funding them. It's that simple. It's a simple matter of economics. So if they're being paid to riot to get rid of Donald Trump, and Donald Trump wins the election, they will be continued being paid to riot until Donald Trump is out of office. Will it lead to American Civil War? Will it be the same as the fall of the Roman Empire? Probably not. I mean, anything's possible in this crazy world. Anything is possible, but I'm willing to wager against it. It's not gonna happen. At least I don't think it's gonna happen. The indication is that it won't. The indication is that after the election, if Donald Trump is reelected and these riots are still happening, Donald Trump will convince whatever governors there are to send in the National Guard, and they will crush the rioters. That's my prediction. Right now, they're holding off doing that because it might look bad. Optically, it might look bad if the Trump administration sends in the National Guard to go and crush the rioters. But after the election, it doesn't matter if it looks bad or not. He's in his last term. So he doesn't have to worry about re-election, and it doesn't matter if it looks good or it looks bad. He'll just do what he has to do in order to protect the American people. That's the way I see it. No, I could be wrong, but that's my political perspective. 1-877-669-1292 is the number to call. 1-877-669-1292. Get in on the conversation here on the Howie Silbiger Show, right here on the True Talk Radio Network. I'm Howie Silbiger, and we are live. We are live for another 15 minutes or so, so feel free to call in and take part. Or if you don't want to call in, you could feel free to type into the message boxes on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube. You can type your message in there. It'll pop up on my screen, and I'll be able to respond to you. Because if you guys don't take part in the show, then it's basically me talking to myself. That's not fun. Well, maybe it's not fun for me. It might be fun for you to watch me talk to myself. It's not fun for me. So once again, let me give you the number one more time. 1-877-669-1292. All right. So we have an American election coming up in just a few weeks. The first debate. Now, everyone's calling the debate a debacle. I don't know why everyone's calling the debate a debacle. I didn't think it was a debacle. I think it really highlighted what the two candidates are all about. If you actually listened and pay attention, if you ignored the theatrics, and that's the problem when people are watching these things, they get caught up in the theatrics and nobody listens to what's actually being said. If you ignore the theatrics of those debates and you actually listen to what the candidates said, it is quite clear that Joe Biden, the Democratic candidate, took credit for the Green New Deal and for a lot of the other things that the Democratic government has pushed forward, some of the radical ideas the Democratic Party has pushed forward in the wake of this election. If you listen to what Donald Trump said, his vision of America in his second term was also equally as radical, just going the other way. So the American people are left with not much of a choice for president. I mean, we have a situation where whoever is elected for the president is in their mid to late 80s. And by the time they're finished their presidency, they're going to be the oldest presidents ever in the history of America. Now, if Joe Biden, who's 77 years old, gets elected president, will he serve out his term? And that's the big question that's being asked. Will he be able to serve out his term? Now, one would hope that he would be healthy enough to serve out his term, and that Kamala Harris would not have to jump in to become president. But they've already started referring to their candidacy. They've already started referring to their administration as the Harris-Biden administration, not the Biden-Harris administration. And that's unprecedented in a presidential election. The president's name or the presidential candidate's name always comes first. So by referring to it, and both Biden and Harris refer to it as the Harris-Biden campaign or administration, it's a little scary when you think about it. So here you have a situation where a man is running for president of the United States, and he's running on his 47-year congressional record. And he's referring to the administration, if he wins, using his vice president's name first. Now, I'm not much of a conspiracy theorist, but if I was, one would ask the question, Is this the conspiracy that he gets elected, then he resigns, she becomes president, then she appoints him as vice president? Is that a possibility? Of course, it's a possibility. Is there a possibility? Will the American people accept that? The American people would have no choice but to accept it. I mean, she wouldn't win a second term, but the American people would have no choice but to accept that because that's the way the Constitution's written. If Trump wins the election, will he be able to do anything, or will they still hound him with impeachments and all the other crazy stuff that they've thrown at him? Will they make up another huge conspiracy that'll last another 4 years, kind of like the Russia one that was all fake? In fact, if you take a look at reality, the only people colluding with the Russians during the 2016 election were the Democrats. But nobody wants to talk about that because the mainstream media hates Donald Trump. It's you're at a situation. Last election, 2016, at the end of the election, the New York Times, the newspaper of record, actually released a statement apologizing to its readership for being biased during the election for Hillary Clinton. They might have to do the same thing after this election. Now, how society has fallen. It's amazing how far society has fallen when the major media is shilling for one candidate over the other candidate instead of offering the news, skewing the news, making stuff up, creating stories, using unnamed sources, whatever that means. Does it mean that the reporter just made it up and decided, I have an unnamed source? Reporters aren't obligated to give their editors their sources. So if I don't like the candidate and I just make up a quote from an unnamed source, could that be anybody? Could it just be me? The voice I hear in my head? It's shocking that and people are taking it seriously, which is even more shocking. We're trained. We are trained. The world has trained over the years to believe what we see on television, to believe what we hear on the radio, to believe it as the truth. And anyone who's taken my course in media manipulation, and I'm going to give I think very shortly I might give an online course on this, on media manipulation and how the media manipulates video and audio in order to make people believe what they believe. And the perfect case example, and this keeps popping up over and over again, is the Charlottetown, the Charlottesville White Pride rally, and Donald Trump's statements that there are good people on both sides. This keeps popping up over and over and over again, and Joe Biden's used it in his campaign. Said Donald Trump likes white supremacists, and then you take a look at the actual statement that Donald Trump made, and the statement was that there are good people on both sides, and I'm not talking about the white supremacists or the KKK or Antifa. I'm talking about the people who just came out to protest over a statue. But they cut out that final line of his statement. So suddenly you have Donald Trump making this grand declaration that there are good people, there are good Nazis and good anti-Nazis, when that really wasn't what he said at all. So it's all about the framing, and when you frame something, and the way you frame it, really makes people believe one way or the other. And when I give the course, I will give you practical examples. I'll show you talk shows that frame the same story in two different ways, and you'd think they were living on different worlds. So I'm thinking I'm probably going to be doing an online course on that very shortly. Keep an eye on the Howie Silbiger Show Facebook page or Facebook group, and you'll be updated on that when that's ready to go. All right, another message from Facebook. Can you quickly talk again about de Blasio's communist background? Thanks. All right, so Bill de Blasio was a communist activist when he was younger. His name wasn't Bill de Blasio. He changed his name when he ran for politics in New York, and he was part of a communist group. And I don't want to talk off the top of my head, so give me 1 second, and I will get the information right now. So Bill de Blasio was born Warren Wilhelm Jr. and he was very busy as a young man. While he was in university, he was part of this communist group that was pushing to move America more towards communism. He was really a big time communist pusher, which is no big surprise if you watch his record in New York City. His social policies in New York City, and his neglect and his anger and his disappointment. Let's put it that way, because I think that's the way he put it. In the rich people of New York, is palatable. His hatred of Donald Trump comes from this communist background, where he actually believed that Donald Trump should distribute his wealth to the poor. Now, is that a bad thing? Probably not, but it's communist. Bill de Blasio worked. He traveled with the Quetzalcoatl Center to Nicaragua for 10 days to help distribute food and medicine during the Nicaraguan Revolution. He was a supporter of the ruling socialist government, the Sandinista National Liberation Front, which was opposed by the Reagan administration at the time. After turning from Nicaragua, de Blasio moved to New York City, where he worked for a nonprofit organization focused on improving health care in Central America. He continued to support the Sandinistas in his spare time and joined a group called the Nicaraguan Solidarity Network of Greater New York, which held meetings and fundraisers for the Sandinista political party. De Blasio, introduced to city politics, came in 1989 when he worked as a volunteer for the David Dinkins mayoral campaign. Following the campaign, de Blasio was an aide in City Hall, and then he described himself as an advocate for democratic socialism when asked about his goals for society. He changed his name at that point to Bill de Blasio. So Bill de Blasio has a long history of supporting terroristic socialist communist governments, especially in Nicaragua. There you go. I would talk more about Bill de Blasio's background. I did a whole show on it, so if you go back into the archives, you'll be able to find a 2 or 3 segments I did on Bill de Blasio and his communist past. All right, that's it for me. It's all the time we have. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Howie Silbiger. This is the Howie Silbiger Show right here on the True Talk Radio Network. I'll be back again tomorrow. That's right, tomorrow. We'll be back again with tomorrow. We'll probably do a Howie Silbiger Show sometime in the evening, and then we will do Political Hitman at midnight. I will see you again tomorrow right here on the True Talk Radio Network. Thank you for joining me. Do appreciate it.